Hello and welcome to another episode of Chats with Chip. I'm your host, Chip Griffin, and my guest today is Chris Dickey. Chris is the founder and owner of Purple Orange, and also the founder more recently of Visably. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So before we started recording, we were talking about where we live. I'm in New Hampshire, you're in Wyoming, and I'm curious, what brought you to Wyoming?
Wyoming, man, it's like such a funny state. It's the shape of a credit card. And I just point to the top right-hand corner and be like, that's where I live. Anyhow, no, I came here. I had a wonderful position as a marketing director for a climbing magazine called Alpinist. And so I did marketing and circulation for Alpinist here in the Tetons. And that kind of was a fantastic experience, both in publishing and in circulation. And then from there, I went into agency work and worked for a handful of large and small agencies, ended up with Carmichael Lynch. And then after that, I started my own agency, and I started my own agency in 2009. And so here we are today, and we're still kicking. You know, through a recession, through a pandemic, and here we are.
I was going to say, so you started coming out of the Great Recession, or in the midst of it, really?
Right at the beginning, really.
Oh,
it was 2009, yeah.
So and then now, obviously, you know, I don't want to say bookended because that suggests that it's over. It's not.
It's not over. we're still standing strong. And actually,
great.
we just kind of, as of this week, I think we're at over 100% of revenue pre-pandemic. So the agency is doing well.
That is great news, and certainly I've heard from a lot of agencies in recent weeks that business has been starting to pick up again.
It's been bouncing back. Yeah.
You know, we started to see the pipelines growing, and now we're starting to see the revenue flow behind it. So it's great to hear that you're at that point. So obviously, you know, you had a 10-year journey in the agency. First of all, you know, why did you start an agency? I mean, particularly in the midst of a recession, what was your motivation?
Well, you know, I'll be honest. I think Carmichael Lynch at the time was thinking about closing their Jackson Hole, Wyoming office. I saw some of the writing on the wall. It was a recession. And I was a young guy then. I guess I still am, but I was younger back then. And I just thought to myself, you know, I think I have what it takes to do this. I think I have the contacts. I definitely understand the practice well enough, and we'll just see if I can get some clients. And so I really had nothing to lose. I didn't want to leave Jackson Hole at that time. I was going to have to pursue a professional career. So I just opened up, you know, I just hung my sign on the door and kind of waited and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And I think that story is pretty similar to probably what a lot of listeners have experienced. You know, life sort of nudged you in that direction at that particular time. And
it was probably a little bit younger than I expected, but it ended up working out great. And it's been a fantastic ride. And then, you know, being part of an agency, and I think, you know, I'm probably at the older end of the millennial generation, and so my you know, particularly my generation and my age group, I'm like 39 years old. We were probably the first people to grow up with computers in our classrooms. Mm-hmm. And we were the very first people to grow up with computers in our homes as young children. And that has a generational impact on how we approach problem thinking, or, you know, problem solving and everything else. And I think, you know, it really pushed us as an agency to think about what's coming up. We saw the writing on the wall with, you know, publishing is changing. I was a marketing director for a publisher. I saw it changing. And, you know, it was going digital. We all know that. I mean, my God, it's completely changed in the last 10 years. But trying to look around the corner and understand what was sticking for our clients was really what led me to the journey that became Visably.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me about the services that you offer as an agency, and you know, why those are your specialties.
So the agency's name is Purple Orange. We're a boutique agency. We're based in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It stands to reason that we would represent outdoor and active lifestyle consumer brands. A lot of the stuff that you might find at REI or you go skiing with, we work with ski brands and apparel brands and rain jackets and tents and stuff, mostly stuff you play with. Mm-hmm. Kayaks. And so it was a really fun industry to be in. It kind of aligned with my personal passions. And then we just developed a really strong niche and expertise in this one particular area. We actually don't have any clients in the state of Wyoming, but our clients love that we're based here. Mm-hmm. They love visiting.
And now, prior to the pandemic, were you a virtual agency, or did you have an office? Or
We have an office. I'm in the office right now,
okay.
and we are. There's 5 of us at the agency. We handle about 12 clients, and yeah, we're all in Jackson Hole.
Hmm. And now, I guess what, a year or so, a little bit over a year ago, you decided to spin off a software company, which I know is something that a lot of agency owners have thought about, coming up with some sort of a product spin-off so that they're not just selling time. What led you to start Visably?
Right. So that's a really good point. That, like, as an agency owner, you are really selling time and selling hours, and it's hard to scale. It's hard to scale an agency. It's hard to scale um, human work, because it's so tied to the human that's doing it, and you can't just replicate that human, right? You got to train somebody else in, and hopefully they do the same work as somebody else, but that's not always guaranteed. With software, you can scale, and that's what I think was attractive to me. But more so, we landed on, I'll just tell you a quick anecdote about kind of my agency experience and client experience. This was, I think, 2016, 2017. We were cranking at Purple Orange. We were winning major national awards for our clients and their respective kind of gear categories, if you will, like big Gear of the Year awards and things like that from major publications. And what we realized was that some of these big, pinnacle PR hits, if you will, were being overshadowed by other hits that we were anecdotally receiving that were showing up at the top of search. And it was there are these vanity placements, and we will continue to win them because they are special and they do make the clients happy, and right. There's something that you can leverage internally, if nothing else. But how many people they're reaching is a great question, especially if they're not through traditional, I think, circulation models. So what I realized was that we had, on one hand, a Pinnacle PR award that was the best thing that we could have achieved for the client, in a traditional PR sense. On the other hand, we had some of these blogs that we hadn't really paid too much attention to, were all of a sudden the very top organic search result in Google for some very highly desirable keyword that the client could never even dream of ranking for with SEO. Yep. And so we look at the performance of those two, and it's not even a comparison. I mean, the hit that's showing up in search was crushing it every single time. And we started seeing this, and we said, how can we be more deliberate about this strategy? How can we win more of these hits in search? And we kind of went down this rabbit hole of identifying keywords and then kind of sorting keywords, bucketing them by transactional and informational keywords. And what I mean by that is transactional keywords are keywords that are going to populate a lot of e-commerce hits and a lot of sales, a lot of click to buy sort of stuff. That's not PR friendly. Informational keywords populate a lot of information and learning and research, and that's very PR friendly. And so we had to figure out, how do we do that as an agency? How do we focus in on these informational keywords? Once we do focus in those keywords, then how do we build lists? How do we do these auditing process? We look at the search engine results page, we work all the way through it, we identify the brand's footprint, we identify the writers and the outlets that are relevant according to Google, or are winning according to Google, and we just prioritize them as an agency. And then we start tracking these SERPs, and a SERP is our search engine results page. And once we started tracking them and putting a more deliberate effort into it, we could actually show the client over time a progression of dominance across the page. Mm-hmm. Whereas even though their own website had stood no chance of winning a first page position, we could engineer it and use our PR toolbox so that virtually every organic link on the page was saying, buy this client's product. Mm-hmm. And it was insanely powerful, and it was very measurable, and it was very tangible in terms of ROI. I think that's something that us as PR practitioners are always struggling with, is how do we measure our work? It's a pretty soft thing, and I think a lot of larger companies are just okay saying, okay, we're going to have a PR agency and we're not going to be able to measure it very well. And we just know that we want it. You
Right.
know?
So it sounds like you very much built the tool to help your team service your existing clients better, right? So that was first and foremost your
how do
concern.
we scale the strategy?
Yeah.
We had presented it for a couple of years at a time. It was becoming far and away the most valuable service that we were providing to our clients. And we were still doing everything else really well. You know, it's not like we weren't still winning those like top tier PR placements, but those top tier PR placements just had a limited value if they didn't live beyond the flicker of the moment that they were published.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about search is that it lingers in front of a really qualified customer for a long time. And when you think about audiences and how, as practitioners, we're trying to reach the right audiences with our communications, our earned media communications, you know, there's a massive difference that I realize between a magazine subscriber or somebody who is leisurely, like, kind of just, you know, perusing a website, and somebody who's typing in a specific search term that's commercially oriented and then clicks on a product. That's an active information seeker versus the passive information seeker. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can just reach the right customers all day long, you'll just see insane ROI on your PR.
Mm-hmm. Now, before you decided to build this, did you have a background in technology at all yourself, or did you have someone on your team who was, you know, sort of the technological whiz behind it, or, you know, how did you approach that piece of it? Because I think that's a stumbling block for a
That
lot
is
of
a stumbling
agencies.
block, and I have no technical web experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the way it started for me was that I was actually a little bit in denial that this tool didn't exist.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, it's got to exist. Marketing's super sophisticated. There's so many tools out there. Like, let's just demo and
Right.
try to find it. And even if it's not perfect, we'll just kind of cobble together a couple different solutions and then we can do it. And there was nothing. There was nothing that was, you know, my question was very simple. It was, where does my client's brand exist in search? And I wanted to understand all the touch points on the first page of search, not just their website, not just their advertising, everything. And that tool did not exist. And it took me a couple of years to come to that conclusion. And then I started kind of asking some friends who are in the tech industries, like, what do you think about this? Have you heard of it? Is it doable? And everyone thought it was really interesting. Never heard of it, and felt like it was achievable. And so we kind of moved down that funnel. The very first thing for me, and this was a bit of just one of those like moments as an entrepreneur. I think, like, you never know when you're going to have these moments. I live in Wyoming. Wyoming does not have a diversified economy. We are heavily reliant on tourism and oil and gas. And Wyoming wants to diversify its economy, so they threw out these grants. It was a very limited time offer, and they were like, okay, we're going to throw out grants to anybody who wants to start a technology company in Wyoming. It just happened to coincide when I was having these like kind of serious thoughts about how maybe making some software, and so I just kind of slapped together a business plan, threw it out there, and we won the grant. And
That's
so
great.
that became our seed. That was like kind of a risk-free way of pursuing this thing and hiring some people and going down this pathway and seeing if we could produce an MVP product. And then from there, we did, and we were able to file a patent for it and share it with some investors, and they thought it was pretty interesting, and then won a second round of more substantial funding, and now we're here, and we're doing tech in Wyoming.
Yeah, and now you mentioned that you had hired a team with some of that seed money. Did you use any of your existing team, or did you really keep the two entities and the teams sort of separate?
It's a great question. So the way I used my existing team, so they're two separate companies. I have not muddled the books there. Yep. The way I used my agency was as the guinea pigs and as the people who would figure out product market fit for us. And so, you know, these are real practitioners working on the tool every single day and presenting it to clients, and they're accountable for the work. And to see them kind of work through it and figure out how to use it and what was valuable and what needed to be added and what wasn't as valuable, that process was really interesting and very helpful for us to kind of craft, I think, what the product looked like and how it was going to work.
Mm-hmm. And so, you're now, I guess, what stage would you say that Visably is at now from a business standpoint?
We're still very early. So we started in 2019, early 2019. We used most of 2019 to develop MVP. We won. We were able to get close some funding before the pandemic hit, which I feel very fortunate about. And then we've basically we hired a proper team that's full time, and now we're really running pretty hard. We just released our beta, which is free. Anyone can show up and use it. It's we'd love to be able to use it because then we get more feedback on it. And we're rolling out a pro version of what we are offering this fall. And the pro version will be much more kind of enterprise level, really much more helpful for agencies. It'll allow you to really scale the strategy to the level that I wanted it to be scaled to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that was going to be my next question was, is it tailored for in-house or brands? Is it large entities, SME?
The way that Visably has evolved, has a lot of potential for PR. And it has, I wouldn't say it's the future of PR. It's for any brand where search is a powerful touch point for a customer. It's going to be important for that brand. Not every brand search is an important touch point. There's a lot of brick and mortar operations. There's a lot of nonprofits that are more regional, things like that. But if you're a national brand and you're using, and search is a great way for people to discover what you do, then Visably will be a great tool for you. Ultimately, Visably does two things. We're a listening platform, kind of like a Talkwalker or a Cision or Meltwater from that perspective, but we listen within search results. So we specifically are looking for keywords and we're listening within those keywords and figuring out where your brand exists. Mm-hmm. Number two, we're a list building tool. And this is what's kind of interesting and really powerful for PR people is one of the pieces that we recognize is that, as an agency is that, like I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, that there are these transactional keywords and there are these informational keywords. And as a PR person, it's not enough just to figure out where your client exists in the in a search. What you need to do is cleanly extract all the PR hits, mm-hmm. and see which ones you won and which ones you missed. Mm-hmm. And it shows you your blind spots, and it also shows you the most relevant writers and the most relevant publications for any given subject in the world. And, it's like we spend so much time as PR people developing lists, like so much time.
Right.
And a lot of times it's like, they're not even that good. They're pretty broad.
Come on.
We all know that. I mean,
you can't let people in on the secret. Their whole company's built around this.
I know that. But, I guess my point is that Google, the world's foremost search engine, has, without question, the most sophisticated algorithm to determine what the most popular content on the web is.
Sure.
And we're able to essentially harness Google's algorithm for PR and for list building. And because we're able to segment those results and identify all the earned media by using machine learning and software, we are able to pull up any number of search results. It's like, the freemium version that's out right now, you can do one at a time, and we don't limit it, but it's only one at a time. When the pro version comes out, you can do unlimited effectively. So you can do thousands of searches. You could input thousands of keywords. You could extract all of those PR hits out, and boom, there's your media list. At least, especially if you're trying to figure out who's really relevant in the eyes of search engines.
Right.
So
now, if I'm listening to this and I own a PR marketing digital agency and I'm thinking about going down this path myself, what advice would you offer to an agency owner who's contemplating the idea of, creating a product or a SaaS platform or something like that in addition to the agency?
I think it really has to start with your client's needs and what you want to accomplish for them as an agency. I never thought I was going to be a tech entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. This was one of those needs that slapped me on the face, and I was like, I I can't not do it.
Right.
And so I think what I would say was that I was a bit of a reluctant entrepreneur, and I think that was to my benefit because I wasn't too keen to follow a direction that wasn't fully fleshed out. And I established the need, and we tested the need with real life clients. We did this for a pretty good test period of 2 or 3 years, and really developed what the practice should look like, and then had a really good sense for what the software should do.
Yeah, I think you've made a couple of really great points there that are worth listening to, since I've also been down this path of having an agency and spinning off a software company. The first is not to force it. If you set out and say, I'm going to build this platform, but I don't know what it's going to do, that's a mistake. And the second piece is to tie it in to the work that you're currently doing. So let it solve a problem for you and your clients, and that will help you create a much better product at the end of the day than if you're trying to create a solution to someone else's problem.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's people who find, one thing that I think I struggle with, not struggle, but something I'm aware of, is the difference between what's a product and what's a feature. And a product needs to be like kind of a core foundational idea that then you can just build out around. And I think a lot of people come up with features which are interesting and useful in very nuanced circumstances, but they're not a product. And, understanding the difference between the two is actually pretty important if you're going to spend this much energy and time and money going down this rabbit hole.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the difference between a magazine article and a book, right? They're both great, but they serve different purposes. And that's the same thing with a product like this. You need to go beyond that feature, and you need to build something that's going to be resilient
and
too.
a feature might be very relevant to one particular case study or one particular client, but think about how many clients are going to use this, and how many people from different industries are going to find value with it, and that's a hard question.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, this has been really great. I think a lot of folks have been able to take some useful ideas out of this, and as they're contemplating the idea of doing something themselves, and they've, of course, learned about a useful product along the way, too. So if someone wants to try out Visably, or they'd like to learn more about you, where should they go?
Yeah, check it out. It's Visably.com. It's a play on the word visibility. And it's just, Visably.com, and we have a beta, and it's free, and we'd love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Well, I encourage folks to give it a look. And again, I really appreciate you being with me today, Chris. My guest today has been Chris Dickey, the founder of Purple Orange and Visably.